morning. Today's Bible reading comes from Matthew chapter 24, verses 36 to 44. But about that day and hour no one knows, neither the angels of heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. For as the days of Noah were, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day Noah entered the ark, and they knew nothing until the flood came and swept them all away. So too will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then two will be in the field, one will be taken and one will be left. Two women will be grinding meal together, one will be taken and one will be left. Keep awake therefore, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Your word, O Lord, is a lamp to our feet. And a light to our path.
Well, thank you, Lorraine, for leading today. You might be sitting there thinking, beauty. We've had him for nearly 5 years, and finally we're going to get the homily that tells us all about the judgment and the fear and the being taken and the thief in the night, and we'll all get that kind of pump up we need to be scared and feared into the love of God. And it's coming today, isn't it? Because I just heard it in the reading. We'll come to that, all right? We'll deal with that when it comes up. Look, today is the first Sunday in Advent, all right? It's the first Sunday, as Lorraine was saying. And the themes of Advent lead us into this space of hope. Hope's the first week. There's a sense in which it's a time for remembering. It's a time for remembering our purpose. It's a time for getting ourselves prepared for the coming of Jesus into our lives. It's a hope that it's a hope that we carry. I like Lorraine's definition, helping us find that place. It's this expectation that we act our way into, that our world can be a better place, that our communities can be more alive, that our own lives might heal and restore. They might find meaning and purpose. Advent's a time when we're invited to be more awake to God's presence. It's a time when we affiliate with God becoming one of us, and we commit ourselves to become active, or to be more active as participants, not just bystanders as life goes by or as the world takes its path. And we're shown how. That's what we remember at Advent, that God becomes one of us to show us how. How do you do this? As I shared last year in our Advent series, that's why God becomes one of us. So our reading this morning has a number of little parts to it. There's this call to remain faithful in the hardships and the calamities of life. That's the Noah story. Stay faithful. Stay focused as God's people on God's purposes. Stay focused on God's work of love and peace and reconciliation. Stay awake. I know it gets a bit harder as you get older to stay. I find that. But we're called to stay awake. To where there is pain and hardship and lostness and brokenness. and to stay grinding at the mill or to stay working in the field, to be part of the answer, of God's answer. And be ready. Because any time, all the time, is the right time to do good. And really that's the call of the passage. To remain faithful, to stay focused, to stay awake, and to be ready. Now you will notice that I haven't given any attention or much attention, or I haven't focused on the... I'm going to use some theological words here, okay? So the eschatology. Does anyone know what eschatology... It's a shame Ron isn't here because Ron would love this. Does anyone know what eschatology is? It's end times. All right, so Matthew, particularly coming near the end of Matthew's Gospel, there's a fair bit of stuff there about end times. What do end times look like? I haven't spent any time focusing or talking about what's called the parousia, which is the Greek word for the coming of Jesus. Is that in the Greek, the word about when will the Son of Man come, parousia is the word. What does that look like? How does it happen? When does it happen? Well, a lot of that's all mystery, right? But I haven't spent any time on the parousia. And I haven't addressed or talked about the apocalyptic nature of the passage. So there's the three words, the eschatology, the parousia, and the apocalyptic nature. You know, suddenly people start popping off. You know, suddenly the 1 minute they're, the next minute they're gone, kind of thing. All right? I haven't given any notice to that. And I want to be clear, and this is where I want to sort of spend a little bit of time this morning. Not just because of the mystery, because the bottom line is the passage itself tells us that we don't know when. We don't know how it's going to happen. We don't know the who. Like, we don't know who's the person popping off and who's the person still left working. We don't know who the thief in the night is. So there's a lot of mystery in all that, but that's not the reason that I haven't taught, that I don't really focus. I've been preaching from this pulpit for nearly 5 years, and I've never really. You'll know that if you'll be very. I'm surprised if you're still here, if you're really hanging out for a hellfire and brimstone homily, because it's taken 5 years. You've got a lot of patience. I tell you what. I want to give you two reasons why I don't focus that much on these things and why I am going to address them today. The first thing is that I think that it's unhelpful to focus on those three, to make those three things, the eschatology, the parousia, and the apocalyptic nature of it, the focus of faith. I think it's actually unhelpful. It's a bit like, here's my analogy for it. It's a bit like, Gail and I have got a holiday plan. We're going to Noosa in January, right? Now, if I spent every day of every minute of every, if I spent every minute of every day of every interaction we had, just telling you I'm going to Noosa in January, how long would it take you to get bored of my conversation? How long would it take you to work out that I've only got one thing to talk about? And what would happen if the only thing I talked about was the fact I'm going on a holiday? What would happen if that was my sole focus, was the destination? Who would do the packing? Because I know Gail would be on at me. Like, who would do rightly so. Who would do the packing? What would I forget if all I could know and all I knew was that I was going to Noosa in January? On the 10th, whatever day we're driving away, if all I'd been doing about the whole time was talking about I'm going on a holiday, I'm going somewhere else. It's not helpful. And apart from that, it's not realistic. Because the destination, or whatever comes next, wherever we're going, whatever that looks like, is a mystery for starters. But secondly, it misses the whole point that we're called to be active and awake and ready and participants here and now. Misses it altogether. Let me be very clear with you, and I say this really, I haven't been able to find in my own head a careful way to say this. But I'm telling you now that some of the most mentally unhinged people I have met in my life, people who are only just this side of the green door, and I've met quite a few. Through ministry, I've met quite a number of people who are one step away from being scheduled. And the percentage of them that are focused on the return of Jesus and the anger that's arousing. Hello, Epec, how are you? Good to see you. She's been on a long holiday. Epec's been to Turkey. Great to have you back. Where was I? Unhelpful. People. It doesn't help people. People get too. It can send you, because all the fear and the anger and the needing being God's spokesperson for retribution and judgment and all that kind of stuff actually puts people in really unhelpful mind spaces. So I'm really aware that when we read those kind of passages, for a couple of people it actually can be damaging. All right? And I never want to focus in that space. The second thing though, and probably the just as simple, just as easy, and you may not like me saying this, but it actually has a whole lot of biblical uncertainty and ambiguity about it. It's not as clear cut as we read it in the English and how it's been translated to us over the years. I'm going to show you why it doesn't read that way in the Greek. I'm sorry to pull the rug out from under you if all you can think about is that heaven's the next place. I'm about to pull the rug out from underneath you. I'm not saying heaven isn't the next place. My hope, my expectation, my longing is that I get to be somewhere else after being here. In the presence of God. I live with that hope just like many of you do. But I want to share with you why that's not what's being said in this passage of Scripture, to focus on that place or to live in fear that it's coming or how it's going to happen. The first point is this, is that the word parousia in the Greek actually has ambiguity around its meaning. The coming of Jesus has ambiguity around its meaning. And even Matthew uses it in a way that's different to how it ends up being shared from evangelical street corners. It can either mean that it's coming, like the cataclysmic flood of Noah. But it can also mean, we hear it twice in this same passage, it can also be undetectable. The parousia may well be undetectable, like a thief in the night. You wouldn't even know it had happened. You wouldn't even know till the next day that it had come. All right? So in the Greek, even the coming of Jesus has this kind of twofold, it's got meanings, different meanings. It's not meant to be read X equals Y. In Greek it says this, so in English it says this. It's meant to be read openly, like it could be, you cannot pin it down. The second thing I want to say is that Matthew's ecclesiology is inconsistent. Even in this passage, chapter 24 and chapter 25 have quite a lot of this end times kind of flavour about them, this feel about them. And somewhere during the course of this coming year, we will read Matthew 25. Now, you know what Matthew 25 contains? A whole different version of events about what the end of the world looks like. It's not people popping off from beside you or whatever. It's this sense of being in the presence of God the King. And there being the sheep and the goats is also Matthew. So it's a different version of it. So Matthew's inconsistent even about his ecclesiology. His eschatology. Matthew is different. The other thing I want to say is I want you to hear this too, is Matthew is the only gospel that has this kind of taken and left and you know, like this sense of things in it. It's only in Matthew and the book of Thomas. So I'm trying to say here that it's not a flavour that fitted right through all the gospel writers. It's only Matthew. And as I say, Matthew even changes how he understands or how he writes down what the end of the world's going to look like. So that to me just kind of says, let's not get bunkered down on one way of thinking about things here. Let's be a little open. The third thing I want to say, and a lot of when you hear me kind of pulling apart things in the Greek, some of it, often it comes from a bloke by the name of D. Mark Davis. So if what I'm saying here today he's got a blog, and he's having a field day this week because his blog is called Left Behind and Loving It. All right? That's his blog title, Left Behind and Loving It. He's a Presbyterian minister in the States. Fantastic. If you're looking for another way of understanding passages, he's brilliant. And he makes very clear this point. His Greek scholarship is spot on. And he makes very clear this point, that in the Greek, the word taken does not match evenly into English. And it has different it's got ambiguity around it. So words like, the word like taken can mean that that's something by force, being taken as a prisoner. But it can also mean that you're joining something. I've taken up. That's how we would say it in English. I've taken up swimming. I've taken up something. I've joined something. Or it might mean that I've accepted. I've taken this on as a point of view. So to just hear it as meaning that taken means that someone's been taken for a purpose away from this earth, which is how the passage does come to us, sounding a bit like in English, is a translation that we have a little bit of room to question. The other one as well is the word left. And left can mean, again, it's in the Greek, it's quite ambiguous. It can mean being rejected. But it can also mean departing or being let go. And I guess the reason why I say this is because interpreters have this job to do when they put our scriptures together, and they pick particular meanings of words. And then preachers take their meanings and then use them to tell you what to think and what to believe. And I know I grew up with this sense of taken and left as meaning that God's a picky lover. God's really choosy, and God has standards, and some will make it and some won't. But when we hear when we hear that these kind of words can have different kind of interpretations, that maybe God isn't hand-picking people, plucking people out of places, that maybe the coming of Jesus may be like a thief in the night. It might be something that is undetectable. We don't have to live in fear of it. The other thing I want to point out is this, and this is probably my clearest point through all of this, is that if we're going to apply the taken and left theology and put it in Matthew's reading as we've just read it today, Matthew leans into the story of Noah, right? Well, who got taken in the story of Noah? The wicked. The wicked. Who got left? Noah and his family. It flips it totally, doesn't it? The people who got taken were the wicked. And the people who were left were the faithful. And maybe what Matthew's trying to say to us is that we get that Noah and his family were left to be a blessing for all of us. That in fact, that being left is the blessing. That seeing ourselves as being that maybe the whole taken and left thing isn't meant to be read how it's been read, interpreted and taught to us. But in fact, maybe what Matthew's trying to say is that whatever the parousia looks like, whatever the coming of Jesus looks like, whatever end times look like, don't fear, Keep your head down working in the field. Keep doing that which is right. Keep grinding at the mill. Be part of God's purposes. Be a blessing. See yourself as left to be a blessing to those around you. Does that make sense? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't, and maybe you prefer it's very hard. I'm very aware that in 5 minutes, how long it's taken me, it's very hard to leave behind a teaching if it's been ingrained in you. It's taken me 30 years to let go of some of the things my filter still goes, this is what it means, and I have to go away and remember that it may not. And all I'm trying to say to you today, I guess, is that the book of Matthew may not be as certain about the cataclysmic parousia and eschatology as we think it might be. That maybe, again, that this isn't a passage meant to instill fear, but it's meant to instill in us courage and persistence to keep at it, even though the world around us is falling to pieces. Stick at it. Stay with it. Show courage where it's needed. Show patience with God's timing. Friends, over this course of our next few weeks, the world will often feel dark, all right? And we will be lighting more candles in this darkness. We will remember that the light of Christ shines in the darkness. And friends, we will be called not to be people of fear, but to be people of courage. Fear often wipes out any blessing that you can be. So I encourage you not to come to Advent, not to come to this reading with fear, but to come with hope. Come with the challenge and the question of how can I be a blessing? How can the light of Christ shine through me? Matthew's community of faith was, they reckon that in the first century, near the end of the first century, Matthew's community of faith was under siege, under political and social siege. And people were losing faith. They were losing sight of why would I want to bother being a Christian? Because it feels like a lost cause. It feels too hard. It feels like everyone's our enemy. It feels like everyone's against us. And our times are a bit different now. We've got more freedom here. But still the call is the same. And I leave you with the word, that four-phrase those words that I shared much earlier. And I believe this is the call of Matthew for us during this Advent period. Remain faithful. Trust in God that whatever comes, whatever happens in our lives, God is present. God is trustworthy. God is faithful. Stay focused. Don't get caught up in all the noise about how the world could be a better place if we all learned to hate more, or we learned how to put boundaries around and tighten things up. Stay focused on God's vision of an inclusive, reconciled, loving people. Stay awake for every opportunity that you might get to be that kind of person. and be ready for it, because it happens every day. So my friends, blessings to you this Advent. Remain faithful. Stay focused. Stay awake. Be ready. Amen.